Hi everybody, welcome to the Manifold channel. Today we're going to take a look at a wonderful new feature in Manifold System Release 9, and all this works in Manifold Viewer as well. And we're looking at Manifold System Release 9 here in Windows 11. I'm going to pop up in this drawing watercourse lines, and this shows all the watercourse lines in Australia. It's about almost 1.3 million features. And we're going to work with this as our sample data, and you can download this data set from the product downloads page, by the way, if you want to follow along at home. And what's the new feature? Well, as you're probably aware that in most databases, you can only look, and when you open a table window and you look at a number of records, for example, let's open the table for this drawing, watercourse lines table. In the info pane, we can see that table has nearly 1.3 million records to it. In most databases, when you pop up in a table from a database, it doesn't show you the full table. It only shows you like 5,000 or so records, per view in that database window. The idea being that it's kind of hard for humans to comprehend more than that at a time. Manifold always upped that limit to over 50,000 because Manifold is really fast, so it's realistic to browse 50,000 records or so. But beyond that, Manifold said, okay, it's 50,000 records per view. Manifold has now eliminated that and has now upped the display chunk to 2 billion records per table. And how that works is that if a table is stored in a Manifold project, and down here we're in the Manifold project part of the project, Manifold simply shows you the entire table. For example, here's the watercourse lines table, and it's now showing all 1.295 million records. I can control end to jump to the end of the table. I can control home to jump to the beginning of the table, and you can see all those. It shows you all those records right down to this very last one that's in the database. Now, what it does is for tables, like for example, for tables that are stored in data sources other than the map file itself. For example, here like a PostgreSQL database, we can click open this table here, public OSM structures, and that's the limit for how many records are shown from that are set in Tools Options. And by default, the setting here is initial number of records to show non-map. You can choose auto, all records, 5,000, 15, 50,000, 150,000. Automatic sets it to match what most databases use, which is 5,000 records. If you like, you can change that to all. If you really want to, when you pop up in a table in some external database to show all records in the table, or you can set it to some reasonable number in between, if that's what you want to do as a sample for an initial number of records to show. I'm going to leave that at auto, and for most databases that ends up being 5,000 records. Click OK, great. So now let's work with this watercourse lines table that's in the Manifold project, and let's apply some filters to it so you can see how it shows how these various displays here in the info pane change what's displayed as compared to what's fetched. I can right click here into a table which is a blank, cell which is blank, and I'll click Add Filter. And this is that is not a null value, by the way. That was just a string value that didn't have any characters in it. And now what we've done is we've filtered this down. You can see this. There's a little filter logo here. That icon, that view filter command is to choose only names which are not empty, and that reduces it down to 390,000 records. And if you like, you can sort those and jump to the control end. See, the last record is now Zulu Creek. Jump to the beginning, 10 Mile Creek. And tables are not sorted, so if you want to order them, you can control click this. Control clicking again sorts them in reverse order. So you can see now that 10 Mile Creek is now at the bottom, down at the bottom of the table. Control N to hit the bottom. Control Home to click the top, and Zulu Creek at the top. I'm going to control click again to resort that way. And let's add another filter. Let's get only major features in the hierarchy. So I'm going to right click that, add filter, hierarchy equal majors. And there, and that reduces it down the number of records that are displayed to 138,000 records that are displayed. Okay, that's super. That's really cool. And let's see what happens when we start deleting things. Because another safety here, and I'm going to select a bunch of records here in the drawing view by control dragging and clicking and dragging. And now what I'm going to do is here in the watercourse lines table, you can see that there's a bunch of them that are selected in various locations. We can zoom to them where they're selected, like there. And here in the watercourse lines, let's delete those. Let's click Edit, Delete. Delete selected records. Yep, we really mean that. So that deletes them. Now in the watercourse lines table, some of those records will have been deleted. And you can see it like right here, there's a section of records that were deleted. What Manifold will do is that if there are more than 64,000 records displayed, it won't update the table. Instead, it'll tell you in this action bar down here, data has been changed. Click to refresh, and it'll mark the ones that are deleted, with this little X icon in the row handle. And the actual row, I don't know if you can see it well in the video, the actual row is just a gray background because that record has now been deleted. And if we like, we can update that by clicking here. That applies to any change. For example, if we altered a bunch of records by, say, changing the line features in them or something like that, that also counts as a change. And to refresh the table, click this, and now it's refreshed. That clears the filters that we've placed. So let's reestablish those filters, and let's click establish filter, add major. Let's do that also. And we're now back to the setting that we were. I understand that in the next build of Manifold, what they're going to do is they're going to preserve the filters even past when you delete stuff, so that'll stay there. And why is that safety feature there? So that if you alter something in the watercourse lines or alter something in the table, it doesn't refresh the table. Because if you're working automatically, so if you're working with a really big table with over 64,000 records, it can be annoying when you're making little changes here. For example, editing the drawing to to pick some line here, and then to to start moving around features in the line to start editing the line for how it works, for how it looks, and then you click update record. It'd be annoying if every time you click to update record to change a feature or to adjust to something like that, the whole dang table would refresh if it's got like a million records in it. So it doesn't do that, because that can be very wasteful of time and resources, especially if you're connecting to some database, some corporate organizational database. So instead, what it does is that, and here I'm going to just click escape to undo changes. So instead of altering the table on every small little change in a record, when you alter a table and there's more than 64,000 features displayed, it pops up in that action bar. If there's less than 64,000 features, it just goes ahead and automatically updates the table in any event. All right, so now let's look at how we've been working with the table that's local to Manifold, and what we've learned is that when it's a table local to Manifold, it'll show every record in the table up to 2 billion records. And now let's see how it works when we pop open a table in a external database. And I'm going to click open the info pane, and you can see it's reaching out there and it's populating it, and it's gone and it's fetched 50,000 some records. And here is a little button if we want to load all records. I'm going to jump to the beginning of the table, control home. There's the beginning of the table, and control end. That's the end of the table. And if we wanted to get all the records from the table, because we can see that there's a number of records here, there's 5,879. Let's add a filter so we show the names that are not null. And you can see here it has there's 5,879 records to the table. None of them are selected. We're displaying 496. Those are the ones that are not null. And we fetched 5,000. If you like, we can fetch all of them by clicking this button here. Tell the table, go ahead and fetch everything. And that it will do. It'll happily do it. It'll reach out there, and now it has every one of those records in the table. And there they all are. And if we had set here in Tools Options a higher value, for example, we could have set number of records to show like 15,000, 50, 150,000. It would have gotten them all, or all. It would have done that as well. So there we've learned how to work with tables along those lines. And let's do one more thing here. Here in that's the watercourse lines table that we've been working with. Let's also let's open this query. And I mean, it's one thing to play around with the various settings here. We can use filters, and we can use, let's add another filter here. Add filter perennial. It's thinking. And when we add all those filters together, to get names that are unempty, hierarchies, major, perennials, perennial, that takes a number of seconds for the thing to commute, because this is really intended to be those sorts of interactive measures here in terms of sorting on these various fields, or right-clicking with filters and all that. All those filters are basically conveniences for working with not particularly large amounts of data. If you want to work with large amounts of data, the right way to do it isn't so much usually to work interactively with very, very large tables, I mean with tens of millions or hundreds of millions of records in them. The way to work with that is to do queries. And let's do the same thing here. Select star from watercourse lines table where the string length name is greater than 1, so that's going to be all non-empty names, and hierarchy is major and perennial is equal perennial. Let's click the run button, and that'll, boom, it immediately starts loading that because it's processing that field very quickly. And you can see how many it's fetched out of all the records that it's displayed in. There it's fetched 22,621. It's basically done. The number of records it doesn't know yet because we have to refresh that based on what, because it's looking at a stream of records that are coming in from the query when it gives you this results table. And in this results table, like anything else, we can control home, click control home to jump to the beginning of the table, control N to jump to the end. And if we want to know the number of records that have been returned in the results table, you can see it right here displayed and fetched. We can see that's the number of records that query returned. And if we want to further filter this, we can do that. We can add results table to filter only those connected records, so that 22,620 records overall returned by this query. Displayed are 7,689 because we have a filter now in play, and the total number that have been fetched. There, and there's 2 lines in the query. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick demonstration. What have we learned? We've learned that any tables that you have here in the main part that are stored in the actual map file, those will be displayed with all records in the table all the time, and up to 2 billion records per table. If we have a table like this one here, which is coming in from the database, an external data source, and that could be a linked file, it could be a data source, like Postgres or a SQL Server or Oracle database. The number of records that those tables display will, by default, will be set by the setting and tools options. And if you really wanted to set it to all, you can do that. That's going to make you very unpopular with database administrators if you choose that setting. And you open up a table saying, "Go fetch me, all 2 billion records out of my corporate database." They're not going to like that. So it's probably wiser to set this down to some sort of limit. If you're working with a data source that are outside of Manifold. If you're doing things like just working with linked files, well, okay, set it to 50,000, 150,000 or something like that. Or set it to some reasonable viewport, and then when it starts loading those records for you, you can, in the info pane, you can click that more button to fetch all of them if that's what you really want. That's no big deal. I guess that's it. So have at it. You can see that Manifold is so fast that it's actually realistic to do things like sort by name. And even with this many records, over 1 million records, that works darn fast. It's unbelievably fast. And it can still do a pretty good job of supporting even sources, things like that, even when we have multiple filters going at the same time. So as an extension of an interactive regime originally designed to be working with relatively small tables, this is a pretty cool deal that you can now work effectively with tables that have millions of records being displayed at the same time. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you like what you see, tell your friends, and support Manifold by clicking on that like button and on the YouTube channel. And for more on this capabilities and many others, check out the user documentation, because that covers everything in tremendous detail. Like I say, thanks for watching, and goodbye from Manifold Land. Well, that was fun. If you want to see more, visit us at www.manifold.net. As always, Manifold delivers the world's most advanced, highest quality spatial products for GIS and DBMS at a low price that you can afford. Once again, that's manifold.net. See you soon.